Hey guys, little disclaimer for the beginning of the video. For the next part to come out, this video is going to have to get to 100 likes. Keeping it low just because why the hell not. So yeah, 100 likes and you'll get a part 5 for this the next day. Peace out, bye. Hey ladies and gents, welcome back. This is going to be part 4 to What If Naruto Was Full Uzumaki. In the last part, we left off with Naruto, Kari, and everybody like that of Team 7 about to leave on their Taizuna mission, and before that happening, obviously, they pretty easily absolutely wreck Kakashi in the bell next, but it's pretty obvious. So, they start their mission, and they begin walking away from the actual village itself. So, after walking for a while, there's a puddle that pretty much only Kakashi notices, because Naruto's pretty smart, same with Karin, but they don't have the mission experience that would be necessary for them to be like, notice that puddle, notice oh, it's the dry season and hasn't rained in a while. They don't notice that, only Kakashi does. So, Kakashi continues on walking, and the basically Chunin brothers would, jump out and attack. They seemingly kill Kakashi, but obviously Naruto and Karin would be the first to react and pretty much absolutely wreck them, tying them up and, not taking them hostage or any shit like that, but basically, tying them up and shit like that so they can't move or anything. So Kakashi walks back out and he's just like, Naruto or Karin, did you see me leave? And Naruto's like, yeah, dude, you're legit not faster than me, I could tell. And Kakashi's like, oh, shit, I guess, okay, whatever. And Kakashi just kind of walks away because he's just like, damn, they didn't need my help at all. He was kind of expecting that, considering, they're just Chunin, while Naruto and Karin are both, high Jonin level, so it's kind of well, I guess that makes sense. Because, legit, Naruto's speed is probably about what his, what do you even call it, the Pain arc, where, after Pain destroyed the entire village, when Naruto is Sage Mode, that's probably about how fast Naruto is right now. He's really freaking fast. So, they continue on walking, and there's this weird mist that rolls over. And then Kakashi yells duck, and Naruto turns around and he sees this massive sword flying towards him. He kind of smiles a little bit because he's just this could be a good test. And he's wearing his weights right now, and he just kind of lifts up his weight so that his wrist would be about in the same line that the sword would be. Naruto then basically has the sword fly into his wrist, and it basically just stops in its tracks. As it begins, falling down, Naruto grabs it. He's kind of, holding his wrist a little bit, because he's just damn, that kind of hurt a little bit. Because, that sword weighs, a real lot. Naruto's just kind of blocked it with nothing but his wrist, and he's just damn. So his wrist hurts a little bit, so he switches the sword grip into his left hand, because, why not? He can use a sword in both hands. And he sees Zabuza out of the corner of his eye. With his not the corner of his eye, but with his sensory abilities, because he can sense, chakras and different shit like that, because I made him be able to do that. So, he now lunges towards that chakra signature, swinging the sword down as he does so. As he's swinging the sword down, Zabuza would obviously be able to sense this being rushing towards him at really quick speeds, and he dodges out of the way, and he then basically puts his foot down on the sword, making it so that Naruto couldn't pick it up, before pulling out a kunai and beginning to trying to stab Naruto. Naruto uses his hand, blocking the kunai, basically grabbing Zabuza's wrist, before basically flicking the kunai around into Naruto's hand, and just basically extending out the kunai and shanking Zabuza in his gut. Zabuza jumps back now, but Naruto can pretty easily, he's a sensory ninja, he can sense where Zabuza is. He pulls out the other kunai, and now that his wrist doesn't hurt so much anymore, he now lunges towards Zabuza with both kunai, realizing that the sword took a little bit too long to swing, and it was too slow. If it was literally any other, normal blade, he could have easily killed Zabuza with that first strike. But, he didn't really have his swords on him, because, he didn't think it would be necessary for anything this low ranking. So, he lunges forwards with his kunai, and he just is about to literally kill Zabuza, but Haku jumps in, realizing that Zabuza is in a large amount of danger right now. And he blocks Naruto's kunai, and Naruto's like, oh, interesting. This kid is he's pretty fast too. He, obviously, barely being able to react to Naruto. He's much faster than, Sasuke, but he's, holding back right now. He's not going at full speed yet. So, and he's still wearing his weights and everything like that. That, like, only when he takes his weights off will he be as fast as, like, his Sage Mode Pain Arc self. So that, he then lunges forward in this basically 2-on-1, and he's pretty easily, like, winning this. Karin or Kakashi, whichever one, it doesn't really matter, would eventually jump in and take on the other one, making it a 1-on-1 fight, where Kakashi would most likely be fighting Zabuza, while Naruto would fight the Haku. Naruto would have a really easy time with whoever his opponent would be, while Kakashi would have a little bit harder time, but probably end up winning too, despite he'd probably have a little bit of difficulty, and he'd have to take out a Sharingan and stuff like that, but they'd be about to win basically both battles, and they would both basically retreat, being Haku and Zabuza, obviously. So they run away, because they realize they're not going to be able to win this fight, and they leave. Kakashi would have had taken out a Sharingan at this point, so he would still need to rest and everything like that. So they end up having to go to Tazuna's house. So after going to Tazuna's house, Kakashi's like, okay, tree walking. Naruto and Karin both know how to do that already, and they basically show it off that they can. He's like, oh, okay then. And he's just like, okay, so then, what can I teach you guys? You guys know water walking? Yep. How about... He's just like thinking, he's like, okay, whatever. I'll just teach Sasuke that. And they're like, okay, whatever. We can do our own training. And he's like, okay. So they both go, and they go into the woods, and they're reading from some different scrolls and, books and different things like that. And Naruto kind of forgot about something. Around the age of 8, he remembered seeing the Flying Raijin Jutsu, and he read what it was and thought that was really cool. But his body, or really anything about him, wasn't able to withhold that, and he wasn't able to actually be able to do that jutsu. He realized, like, maybe now he could actually try training for that and have that as a, jutsu that he could use, because that would be really useful to add to his arsenal. And it would make him, like, really freaking strong. Like, that would basically make him on Minato's level if he had the freaking Flying Raijin. Like, think about that. Like, what in the hell? Like, especially if he gets Sage Mode later on. Like, bro, what the hell is this shit? So he'd be like, okay, I'm going to try learning this. So he begins learning it, and obviously this takes a while for Naruto to learn. Like, he wouldn't learn it in the weeks that he's at Tazuna's house. He learns, like, the very, very basics of it, but he would not be able to use it in, like, a combat situation against, like, Zabuza or anybody like that, at least not yet. Just because it would take him longer to actually learn a jutsu that's as complicated as that. So the weeks would end, and Kakashi would eventually, like, he'd be strong enough to, or, like, he'd be recovered, and he would basically be like, okay, now we're gonna go to the bridge. We're most likely gonna encounter with Zabuza and Haku again. And they're like, okay, whatever. They're kind of expecting this to happen, because they're like, damn, those two were pretty strong. That was a pretty cool fight that we had. So they end up leaving for the bridge, and once they get to the actual bridge itself, because obviously, they get there, Naruto would basically, I should send a shadow clone ahead. And he does so, and it encounters Haku and Zabuza, and they actually manage to destroy the clone. They're like, Naruto kind of explains, he's like, yeah, those two are waiting there. They're hiding to the left in some mist. Like, we would have been able to sense them, but I know exactly where they are now. And Kakashi's like, okay, good. It's good to know where they are. Because he's just like, I would have done that too, but, like, his clones take up, like, a lot of his chakra. Like, he can only make, like, a few lightning clones, at least at the start. So he's like, good job, Naruto. Naruto's like, yeah, I figured that out from, like, reading books. And Kakashi's like, wait, books? Scrolls? What is he? I don't know what he's talking about. And then he remembers back to, like, their little training where they left, and he's just like, wait, is that what they were doing? Reading from books and scrolls? And is that how they got so powerful? Because they know all the Uzumaki, like, secret jutsu and different things like that. And he's like, okay, I'll have to keep that in mind. Maybe I could use that and get stronger myself. Maybe I could learn my master's jutsu, is what he's thinking right now. Because he remembers that, Flying Raijin would be an Uzumaki jutsu at that point. Because, Minato was an Uzumaki. So, with that, they then head out to the bridge, and Naruto and Karin both sense to the left that is where Haku and Zabuza are both, like, hiding out, trying not to be detected. And Kakashi would have to take out a Sharingan, but he would be able to detect them too if he tried to. Or he might be able to know exactly where they are either way because of, like, his enhanced smell and, different, abilities like that. But they all basically know exactly where they are, except for Sasuke, but he knows the general, like, location because Naruto and Karin would tell everybody. So, Naruto would make a few clones, and they would all charge in that direction. Before Haku or Zabuza would even be able to react, there'd be a bunch of kunai being thrown at them, and they would basically be, like, hastily trying to block all of these kunai, but a few of them would get through their defenses, with 2 kunai each going in to one shoulder of Zabuza and a leg of Haku. So Zabuza would basically, like, pull out the kunai and be like, damn. Haku would basically doing the same thing before they walk out of the actual mist itself. They're like, how'd you even know we were there? And Naruto is just like, well, not only am I a sensory ninja, but remember that clone I sent ahead? And Zabuza's like, wait, you've legit got to be kidding me, right? You didn't do that. You weren't that good. You didn't know where we were hiding because of that, did you? And Naruto's like, yeah, I knew exactly where you're hiding, and I confirmed it 2 times basically because, sensory and with a shadow clone. And they're like, god damn this kid. So then Zabuza would he'd be like, water prison jutsu, basically appearing in front of Kakashi before Kakashi would be able to take out his Sharingan, putting him in a water prison before making, like, as many clones as physically possible to try holding off the other 3. So one of his clones would put Naruto and Sasuke inside of a water prison because they weren't expecting to, like, fight so quickly and expect Zabuza to, like, instantly, like, leap at them and lunge at them because they were expecting, like, a little bit more of, like, a little warm-up period. So Zabuza manages to put most of them in water prisons, but Karin was a little bit more on her guard and she manages to dodge it. And she gets out of the way before popping almost all of the clones, releasing everybody but Kakashi from the actual water prisons, before they just kind of, like, look at Zabuza, and he's just like, why did I even think that would work? I know that both of those two, the 2 kids, are literally, like, above me and Kakashi, so, like, how am I supposed to do this? How was I even supposed to win this fight? And Naruto just kind of smiles at this, and he lunges towards Zabuza now, basically sending him flying away from the water prison, releasing Kakashi, who is kind of, like, out of breath at this point because, he's been underwater for minutes at this point. He's like, thanks, Naruto. Because he's just like, he was almost dead there, and he's like, thanks, kid. But I kind of want to take this fight, Naruto says, because he's just like, I released you. I want to be the one to fight him because he realizes that he dropped his guard and he shouldn't have done that, even though, like, they were in front of him. So he realizes from his mistake, and he's just like, okay, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to, he's not going to do that again. And he lunges at Zabuza now, and he's just like, okay, I'm going to end this quickly. So he just basically pulls out a kunai, and he lunges towards Zabuza, like I just said. So, with that, Zabuza would not be able to react to his speed. Naruto would shank him through the chest, and he would basically be, like, repeatedly, like, kind of like a rapier. He'd be, like, doing that, with Zabuza barely being able to dodge, like, almost any of them. And he'd be getting all these cuts on his side and on his arm and different things like that. Kind of like that anime fighting scene where, like, the other person has a sword and they're, like, really outspeeding the other person. Like, it's kind of like that. So he's barely being able to, he's, like, almost being able to dodge all of this, but not quite, and he's getting all these, like, tiny little cuts and gashes almost all over his body. And Naruto's kind of just, like, he's laughing at this, because he's just like, damn, this guy's supposed to be, like, a Kage assassin, and here I am just kind of, like, da-da-da-da with the freaking kunai. And he's just like, I don't even have my sword on me right now, dude. Like, what are you doing? Like, how am I, like, you're not, like, you're supposed to be stronger, I'm supposed to be weaker. It's like, come on, bro, come on. So he would finish off Zabuza pretty easily. And they would be like, okay, well, what now? The gang leader would show up, they would massacre literally all of them, and they'd bring the actual, like, leader back for questioning to the village. So yeah, they bring them back, and they give, like, Haku and Zabuza a little bit of a, like, a burial thing. Like, it's not, like, as sentimental as it was before. They didn't, like, go through that, like, little character change that they did. And Naruto never really learned his Nindo or his Ninja way, at least not yet. So he's like, okay, whatever. They give him a little proper burial because, they're pretty nice people. And they end up heading back to the village. After getting back to the village, Naruto, Kari, and everybody like that, they'd be really tired. And they'd all end up heading to their houses because they're like, okay, I'm going the fuck to bed. I'm like, this has been a long, like, couple weeks. Realizing now that maybe these things actually make people, like, a little bit more tired and a little bit more like that. So they're like, okay, I'm going the fuck to bed. So Naruto and Karin would, like, you know, they'd go to bed because, you know, they live in the same house and, you know, they go to bed. So, yeah. Not going into detail because, you know, or not going into detail because they don't do anything, for one, and for two, they're like 12 years old at this point. Like, come on. They gotta be older before they start doing shit. Come on, guys. Like, it's obvious that I'm gonna do a Naruto x Karin ship in this, but, like, come on. They gotta be older. At least after, like, the 3-year time skip. Or not at least, but, like, after the 3-year time skip. That's when I'm gonna actually have them start, like, doing shit. Like, maybe they'll kiss or hug or something before that, but, like, come on. If they start, like, doing shit, that's too early. At least for them. So, whatever. So, they go to bed, and again, I'm not saying anything about it, and, you know, things like that. Things happen, they wake up the next morning, because they, like, hugged and kissed, because they, like, you know, they started liking each other, and they finally admitted it. Like, you know, like I said, they might hug and kiss, but they're not going into any other things like that. And they wake up smiling at each other, because, you know, they're like, that was the first time, like, we really thought about that as, like, sleeping together kind of a thing. Like, they didn't, like, you know, do anything. But you know what I'm talking about. So, whatever. They wake up the next morning, they're smiling at each other. They get up, they go get breakfast, which would obviously just be ramen. And they basically have that happen for, like, the next few days. And then Kakashi would basically be like, yeah, you guys should do the Chunin exams. So they're like, oh, that'd be frickin' dope if we did that. So they're like, okay, we'll do the Chunin exams then. But that's where I'm going to leave this part off because I can. So yeah, peace out, guys. See you in the next part. Later and bye.